even in a reset year, are the St. Louis Cardinals actually going to try and contend in 2025? We got some interesting tidbits over the last few weeks about kind of the Cardinals' status, maybe not trading as many veterans as I thought, mostly clearing space for young players, but in the words of John Mozeliak, the team's not going to look all that much different. Can the Cardinals actually contend in 2025? And is not a full reset actually the right move for the organization? We'll talk about all this and more on this episode of Deal on the Cards. So Sandy, Andrew, first of all, this is Deal on the Cards presented by 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. We go live twice a week over here on the YouTube channel. So like and subscribe. Or if you listen on audio, rate the channel, subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate all of the support. We cover all the recent Cardinals news, rumors, and updates, and then have special guests on along the way. We'll talk about a charity live stream that's coming up soon as well that we'd love for you guys to be a part of. And if you want to potentially win a signed Mason Wynn baseball, which Andrew has on him somewhere, you can, once we hit 3K subscribers on YouTube, we're going to be giving that away. So if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe and then go check out our Twitter because there's another way to get an entry on there as well. And that's how you submit proof of entry. Yep, there's the Mason Wynn ball right there. But yeah, today, Katie Wu, as always, great stuff over at The Athletic. She posted kind of like some thoughts about the Cardinals going through this youth movement in 2025. And one of the main highlights of the story that I think will maybe is at least a little bit of a different perspective than what we entered the offseason with is this idea that they're not going full tear down mode. They're not going tank mode. They're not necessarily expecting to lose next year. Maybe they're not have full expectations to make the playoffs, but they're hoping to win. And that's not just like sometimes losing teams say, oh, we're trying to win every game, but really they're not. I think the Cardinals are intending to be competitive next year, which is maybe a little bit of a different posture than we thought going into the offseason. Again, they never said we're going to lose, but they definitely weren't saying they're going to win, which is different for them. Sandy, I want to go to you first. Like, just before we even get into the nitty gritty of what that looks like, is that the right decision to not fully reset to roster, to potentially keep a Gray and Contreras, which they have a say in it? Okay. So
I was going to throw that in.
So, but they're not necessarily pushing them toward a trade. It seems like, right? They're not necessarily looking to flip some of these highly valued players. They might keep a Ryan Helsley. Like, is this the right? I mean, again, it's too early to say, but Sandy, if they go into the season trying to win, is that the wrong move?
I don't think they should go into the season trying to lose. I think I'll put that out there first, right? So I'm not sure it's as black and white as should they try to win or should they not try to win. I think trying to lose would be a mistake here. The problem is the Cardinals right now have this core of young bats who all came up at the same time and unfortunately all started their clocks in kind of a weird time for the club. Whereas like Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, eventually Jordan Walker, Alec Burleson, these guys are going to start getting expensive. They're going to start reaching arbitration. And eventually we're going to be talking about them as impending free agents. Donovan's already through 3 full seasons. He's halfway through his rookie deal with the team. That's kind of scary. You're already talking about a guy who's pretty close. And if you just throw this out the window and say, okay, we're not going to win this year. And I saw a lot of people who said, tear it all down. Try in 2028. It's like, okay, so you're going to throw 2027 out the window in 2020. Like at that point, Donovan's a free agent, so they can't just throw these years away because it's just not what the timeline for the club looks like based on where these players are in their contracts. The other thing too, you mentioned it, but I'm going to expand on this. Contreras and Gray in particular have a say in what happens with them. They have no trade clauses. It sounds like they don't want to go anywhere. For Contreras to be treated the way he was treated by this organization, to probably be as frustrated as he was, to have these other guys like Arenado and Goldschmidt who are supposed to be leading the team and have all the pressure in the world on his shoulders in his first 2 years here and to still perform the way he did, I'd want to trade. I can't believe he doesn't. But if he doesn't want to trade after all that, he's not going to want to trade. He's staying. Contreras wants to be a Cardinal. The same thing can be said for Sonny Gray, a guy who had a lot of pressure on him coming into this year. For the most part, performed really well. Some weird peripherals, some weird stuff. Unfortunate home run rate. But at the end of the day, he was good. He was a legitimate frontline starter for the Cardinals. Those guys want to stay. You can't lose with those guys on the team, or you at least shouldn't be trying to lose. You shouldn't be wasting that. You shouldn't be wasting these other guys. And like the people that say the Cardinals need to rebuild, I don't know where like rebuilding gets a lot of teams a lot of the time anyway. I mean, yeah, you can start stacking up draft picks, but the new anti-tanking rules make that way harder. You can't just pull an Astros. You can't just pull a 2014 Cubs and be terrible for 5 years and draft in the top 5 years in a row. It doesn't work that way anymore. You get penalized for that. And we're going to see teams start to realize that for the first time in 2 years when we hit that first time, or the first thing where it's like, oh, you've drafted in the top 10 3 times in a row. Now you have to draft outside the top 10.
I think the White Sox just hit it this offseason.
Yeah, you're actually so right. Yeah. You're so right. That's the first team to do it, and that's tough. That's a huge penalty for your organization. And so I think it'd be stupid for the Cardinals to try to lose. Should they try to win? Not necessarily like try to contend all in, right? Like trade Ryan Helsley. He has way more value to another team than he does to your team. A potential 50 save closer is not a luxury this team needs. No. But at the same time, like, don't just ship guys off for pennies on the dollar and don't waste your time.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see because the Contreras and Gray, it definitely seems like they're going to stay, but there's been no report yet that's come out that said Contreras doesn't want to leave or like won't leave and Gray won't leave. It just seems like they're both open to staying. So again, and part of that might be posturing by the Cardinals. It's just something I haven't necessarily considered, or we haven't talked about a lot yet, but there's a world where it's like, hey, Contreras' trade value is better if we're committed to the idea of him being here right now, and some team has to come here and convince us otherwise. Same with Sonny Gray, right? And I kind of think that's the posture they're taking, is we would love to have Willson Contreras around and he wants to stay, but we will present him a trade option if a team comes in and says, hey, we will give you something that you can't refuse. Same with Sonny Gray. Now, then it's up to Sonny Gray and Willson Contreras to turn those things down. The Nolan Arenado thing continues to be a little bit interesting because it's pretty clear at this point they're exploring trades for him, but like, are they going to get something worthwhile to move him? And is he going to want to move, right? Like if his options are the Angels and the Mariners, is he actually open to that? I mean, I think obviously he would love to go to the Dodgers, but like, do they actually want him? The Ryan Helsley piece of this is where I'm like, you got to cash in here. I get if like they're getting underwhelming offers that like you hold because you're not going to just sell them for nothing. But I have a feeling at some point this offseason they're going to get something for him. And that's why that's so early in an offseason, I have a hard time like really taking every word Mo says like totally literally. Not, and it's not in like a sense that he's lying to us, but it's also like if I'm running a baseball, like I do fantasy football, I'm not going to go out and be like, oh, I'm just going to trade this player by X point tonight, give me whatever offer. It's like, then you don't get good offers, right? Like, so you kind of posture and and like that's one of the things, like you wouldn't even name drop Nolan Arenado as like the guy they're exploring offers for. And he said, because we want to like figure out what we can get for him, and we're not going to lose our leverage. Yeah. And so I think part of this is leverage plays too, where like even Ivan Herrera, it's like maybe they will trade him still, but like now teams think he's the starting catcher, so they're not like, oh, this guy's out of options and they don't like him, so they're definitely going to trade him, so we're going to underwhelm offers. It's like, okay, the only way the Cardinals are going to move this guy is if we trade for him like he's their starting catcher and we convince them otherwise. So Andrew, where are you at kind of with this idea of like you sent us the article this morning. You're like, hey, we should talk about this. Now that was a great idea. Like, where are you at with Katie's piece this morning?
Yeah, I feel like the team is moving in a different direction for sure. They're going to let these guys have run, but I think they're finally learning from their mistakes of maybe they don't give the young guys enough opportunity, and then they get better elsewhere, and maybe they're finally believing in the talent that they have within the system, which is what we want to see, and which is like for sure what we need to happen. Like we need Jordan Walker to pan out. We need Lars Nootbaar to pan out. We need all these guys to be better than what they have been. And like Nolan Gorman needs to like finally have some run and not have so much pressure on him. And if you let those guys play, like you lose Goldschmidt, you lose Arenado, like we're kind of baking that in at this point. Is your team really that much worse, right? Like you have Willson Contreras moving to first base, and that opens the door for Ivan Herrera to catch. Would you rather have Ivan Herrera or Paul Goldschmidt on your team? I personally, I think Ivan Herrera looked a lot better last season. And then with Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman, and Lars Nootbaar and Victor Scott and Jordan Walker, you kind of run out of room for Arenado. And if somebody gets hurt, you can have Sajaci step up, who's looked really good in the AFL. Yeah. Like, are you really getting that much worse? I don't know. Like, not really. And you have the thing in 2022 that happened where you lose your veteran leaders in Yachty and Waino. And if you lose your veteran leaders again, but guess who wasn't your veteran leader last year? It was Brandon Crawford. You already lost that guy. He's
Matt
already
Carpenter
gone.
too.
Matt Carpenter's already gone. You can bring him back
Yeah.
if you want. If he really wants to be here, you can
please
bring him
don't.
back.
Let's not even.
Woo!
Let's not even.
We know what's gonna happen. They're putting
But,
Matt
like,
Carpenter back.
Are you serious?
Like you lose Goldie and Arenado, you're not losing that
I think
voice
they
in the
are.
clubhouse because Goldie and Arenado asked for more voices in their clubhouse, and that's where Carpenter and Crawford even came from to begin with. So I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
And
we were quote
you lose your
overrepresenting
all-star
guys.
closer,
Yeah.
but you know what? That's fine, right? Like you can find if Chaim Bloom cooks, you let him cook in the minor league system. You'll find another Ryan Helsley. Maybe not as good as Ryan Helsley.
Whoa. I like what you're saying, and I think I
like
agree
you'll
with
find
most of
another
it.
guy that can do that job like reasonably well, and you're not going
I'll
to
give
lose
you
that many
that.
more games.
I'll give
right?
you that.
Maybe like you lose like an extra 2 games without Ryan Helsley, but maybe the offense is now better. Maybe Jordan Walker actually gets to play, and he wins you 3 games instead, right? And then you're looking at a team that can be pretty good next year. Like I'm not saying they're going to win the division, although the division is wide open. The division is completely open. I'm not saying that you're going to make the playoffs and make a deep run, although, I mean, crazier things have happened. But if you don't strip this team down and you keep Contreras and you keep Gray, like I can see a world where this team isn't so bad next year, and you can talk yourself into it, right? This team was 1 year away. Like if this team had this record in 2023, they would have been 1 game out of a playoff spot behind the Marlins. And who knows, right? Like you start trying more in the last week of the season, you start contending more, and maybe you win that extra game. And you don't know. Like you can start talking yourself into it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Impress Mosewater if you want, but yeah, I don't think this team is all that much worse because I think every single position player had like their worst possible outcome this season, except like Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson.
Yep.
And right, like even Lars Nootbaar, he was good, but he was hurt again. So Brendan Donovan, he was okay. Like he wasn't 2022 Brendan Donovan. He was fine. He was still pretty good.
Still
but like
really good player.
Jordan Walker had his worst possible season. Nolan Gorman has his worst possible season.
For sure.
Goldschmidt has worst possible season. Arenado has worst possible season. And Contreras was hurt for half the year. So I see a lot more improvements that can be made without those guys being there and keeping Contreras as that leader in the clubhouse than I do with like just, oh no, we lost 2 Hall of Famers who probably going to be that good.
So forgive me if I'm misinterpreting, but what you're saying here is basically almost everything leaving the team is replaceable. And I think
except
I think
Ryan
I'm on board
Helsley.
with that. And I think Ryan Helsley's the only unreplaceable, but I'd rather have a closer that you're not going to replace.
But imagine if you get like a major league
that you can't
ready.
Replace. Yeah.
You could get a prospect who's close.
To Mozeliak's credit, like the Cardinals have gone through a bunch of different closers since that World Series team in 2011 between like Rosenthal, Bud Norris, Jordan Hicks, Alex Reyes, right? And like all of them have been elite at some point in time in the closer's role. Like Bud Norris was really good in the 1 year that he closed for the Cardinals. Jordan Hicks started to turn into a really good closer before injuries took over. Alex Reyes had the best first half of any closer in a long time. Converted his first 26 opportunities that season before imploding at a game I was at with a 6-0 lead over the Cubs. But that's not important. Ryan Helsley emerges as a guy like Andrew. You and I used to watch the Cardinals and say, "Oh, Ryan Helsley, this guy stinks."
I didn't like him,
and he turned into, if not a top 3 reliever in all of baseball, like a top 5 guy. He's great. So it's not even crazy to say the Cardinals will find a guy that can close games. I mean, I think Ryan Helsley is the best closer the Cardinals have ever had. And so I don't know if they'll have another guy like that, but it's not unreasonable to say they'll find a guy to succeed in that role. Like someone will do it.
Because what did they win? 83 games this year, right?
Yeah.
And so like, even if you're of the opinion that like, because I've seen people like, oh, like you'll like someone will like post a mock line of the Cardinals and someone will like book it 65 wins, 71 wins. And it's like, okay, does losing Paul Goldschmidt and Ryan Helsley and Kyle Gibson, Kittredge, and Lance Lynn, is that a 12-win swing for the team? I don't know if that's true. And that's totally leaving out the fact that Jordan Walker could be better, Nolan Gorman could be better, Lars Nootbaar could be better. You get a full season Willson Contreras.
Herrera is going to play.
Herrera, a full season of that instead of 70 games. You could have the upside yeah, plus Pedro Baez, plus the upside of like Quinn Matthews could be
Yeah.
something really special. Like, who knows what you else you get from the young
McGreevy.
pitching. Yeah. I think like the nice thing about McGreevy is like he could replace what Lance Lynn
True
gave you,
ace.
or Cal Gibson gave you, and you're not paying him all the money. There's a world where this team is winning 80 something games with a similar roster because you're giving the young guys an opportunity to succeed. You're betting on some of the upside a little bit more. But again, you also have the lower floor now, where I felt pretty good about Kyle Gibson giving me what he did this year. There's a world where Lance Lynn imploded though, but and who knows? Like, if you brought back Paul Goldschmidt, I'd bet he's at least probably a little bit better next year than he was this past year.
Hope so.
But you never know, right? So, I think like losing Ryan Helsley is a huge loss.
Yeah.
My thing is like, what do they do with the entire bullpen? Because that was like, I think people kind of, not all the time, but we kind of like are like, oh, the Ryan Helsley was so good, and if you lose him, you're going to lose all these games now because of all these more blown saves.
No.
I think the bigger deal is like, okay, do you have 4 or 5 guys you can go to that you can rely on? It does Ryan Fernandez, Matthew Liberatore, and JoJo, and whoever it is that you have in stock. Are those guys good enough to hold down the bullpen this year? I think like specifically like a Matthew Liberatore and a Ryan Fernandez, you could potentially see it. Like Gordon Graceffo, I think he's a strong candidate to join that mix this year as a guy who probably won't make the rotation, but they're probably going to want to have impacting them at some point. Yeah. So like to your point, Sandy, like they've been able to find relievers over the years. I think the problem's been they haven't really, until last year was the first time in a while that they struck gold with a strong bullpen overall and not just one or two guys.
They've always found a closer. There every year a closer emerges with the Cardinals to the point where I almost don't worry about it anymore. Even in years that look weird, like even in 2021, Alex Reyes emerged as the closer and was nails for 75% of the season.
Yeah. And I want to highlight something Bill said here, because I don't want to diminish like Gibson and Lynn. We did win close to 60% of the games that Lynn and Gibson started. And that's where going into the season, I was like, this was such a big upgrade for the club, because instead of Jake Woodford and Drew Rom and Zach Thompson and the Matthew Liberatore, those guys giving you starts, it was Lynn and Gibson who you felt steady about. And if the offense came to play that day, you probably win that game. This year, I actually feel okay about trusting some of those young arms. I think a Michael McGreevy can do that kind of stuff. I think at some point you probably get that kind of production from Quinn Matthews. We've seen Andre Palante already, right? The problem was going into 2023, what was the young arm you're supposed to rely on? Michael McGreevy turned into that eventually during the year, but I mean, if he'd started in the rotation at the beginning of the year,
it could have been ugly.
It could have been really ugly. Palante did not start very well. Matthew Liberatore got his chances. It did not go well. Gordon Graceffo was not ready. Like we were at Blogger Day this year, and Mo was like very adamant that he was really upset by the AAA arms. They just were not performing like they needed to. I think they're in a different situation this year. They're pitching where even from a competitive standpoint, like they're trying to win this year. Like they say they had made the playoffs, and the end of season press conference was like, see, we turned it around. We're trying to win next year. And they kept a big payroll. I still might be declining the Gibson and Lynn options and letting some of those young arms go, because you might have the same floor-ish with a higher ceiling. And then again, this lineup, it's like, okay, like I'm not saying Nootbaar is going to be healthy and great this year, but like you have to see it at this point. And that's my main takeaway from Katie's piece. It's not necessarily that they're like avoiding like this reset that they want to do. Like this is baseball, not the NBA. You don't need the number 1 overall pick to turn your team around. You need a better player development system, and you need to give opportunities to young players. And that's what I read from that piece is, hey, we're going to be prioritizing the playing time of a Nolan Gorman, a Thomas DeJC, Lars Nootbaar, Alec Burleson, these guys, and we're going to sink or swim based on these guys. And we think we can swim quite a bit. It doesn't mean we'll be good enough to win the race and make the playoffs, but we're going to see what happens. And then when you go into the next offseason, it's like, okay, maybe Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman bounce back, but Lars Nootbaar is hurt again. And it's like, okay, they have to figure out that position now. They can't just go into another year saying maybe Lars Nootbaar could be that. And the problem for years now is that they really give a guy one shot. And that's kind of what John Mozeliak highlighted in that piece and kind of opened up about is we never gave guys the opportunity to figure things out. We just were like, hey, you have to produce now or it's not going to work. And it stunted their growth and ended up not developing. Then they go on to Tampa Bay and ended up being good. They go on to Washington and ended up being good. And instead, it's like, hey, if Nolan Gorman has a 36% strikeout rate at the end of May, he's probably still in St. Louis, probably figuring it out. Jordan Walker is batting 230. It's like he's probably staying in St. Louis and figuring it out. Could end up really well, could not. And I'm totally okay with that method.
The other thing is, like you said, these people are saying, 65 wins, book it. Do they forget that they just watched a 71 win team 2 years ago, or a 71 team 2 years ago? Like, that team was terrible. There's a real there's a distinction to be drawn between the 2023 Cardinals and the 2024 Cardinals. They were significantly worse in 2023. They were a much more competitive, much more watchable, just much more fun team this year. And for people who are saying that all of a sudden the Cardinals are just going to go straight back to that, like, I don't know if I can see that happening with these minimal losses. That team was a lot worse than this current team.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I mean,
why do you think
the 2023
not?
team had the same lineup as the 2024 team, and the 2024 team, the lineup got significantly worse, but the pitching got significantly better.
The 2023 team was starting Adam Wainwright every fifth day. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, it just was not watchable baseball.
Like, Paul Goldschmidt was still an all-star. Arenado was still an all-star. Actually, Goldie wasn't an all-star, but he was like playing well enough to have been an all-star
until the second half. And same with Nolan. Nolan cratered in the second half.
Yeah, they were horrible at the end of the year.
Like,
unwatchable.
I don't know. I feel like the 2024 team is like marginally better than the 2023 team. It was just better managed, got a little bit luckier, and just had.
I don't know. I don't think I agree.
The 2023 team had a lineup that was like passable, and the 2024 team had a lineup that was just terrible.
Yeah, the lineup was really bad, but like the lineup, the pitching was good enough to keep you in games. There weren't, like, in 2023, it felt like at least 3 days a week, the Cardinals were just out of the game. It felt like I turned on the game in the fourth inning, and it's like, oh, Wainwright started, and the Rockies are up 9-1. It's like, great, I'm not going to watch this game. 2024 did not have many games like that in comparison.
Yeah, but it also didn't have many games where, like, oh, the Cardinals have won this game, I can turn the game off and go to bed. It had, like, oh no, they're up by 1 run.
Because the bullpen was so bad, though. The bullpen was horrendous in 2023. They never did that because they couldn't lock down leads.
Yeah, that's part of the reason. Like, I think that's the difference. Bernie talked about an episode recently too.
The expected win-loss for the 2024 Cardinals is like stark. It's shockingly.
It's close. I see why that stat would be close, but I still think, as someone who watched a lot of games in both seasons, I think there was a difference between the teams. This team felt so much more competitive. Also, this team wasn't out of the race by May 1st, which changes things a lot.
They were almost out of the race by May 1st.
Yeah, but that season was baked, and like, it was over by May 1st.
Let's continue the conversation in just a moment. Let's thank some of our sponsors, because I want to talk more about, like, what's the difference between, like, that really bad team in 2023 and like let's talk it out together and say, like, is this team actually going to be better or not? Because I think this is an interesting argument or debate here, I guess. But we do want to thank our presenting sponsor, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, that are located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards, and they have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars around the league. And again, once we hit 3K subscribers, so if you're watching now and you're not subscribed already, we're going to give away a signed Mason Wynn baseball. Andrew's holding up a signed Mason Wynn card from 314. That's not what we're giving away, but it is a cool card. But the 314, if you want to show the baseball, we're going to be giving away that baseball at 3K subs. So if you're not subbed already, please sub, like this video. It helps us out a ton. And again, we're just so thankful for 314 and their partnership with us. And we know many of you already go in and check out their products. So make sure you let them know that you heard about them through us, or that you were reminded to go in through us, and go check them out, because they've got a lot of cool deals and stuff going on. And then we also want to thank Smith Agri-Service. It's a family-owned independent realtor providing farmers in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa with competitive pricing on Corteva, BASF, generic brand crop protection products, and Burvant corn and soybean seed. You can scan the QR code that's been on this for the screen for most of the podcast. You can send them a text to let them know you're interested in their services or learning more about them. Or you can text the number on the screen now, 202-988-1106, or email them at smithag@irtc.net. Again, if you're in the agriculture business at all and want to expand some of maybe the people you work with and figure out what kind of deals out there, Smith Agri-Service can help you out. So be sure to check them out. And then again, we're having this charity live stream that's coming up on December 19th, which is a Thursday. We're super excited about this. We're going to be live in person from 6 to 10 p.m. Over at 314 Sports Cards to record. So far, some of the guests that we've announced is Bernie Michaelis, Jeff Jones, Kareem, who you all know from Birds on the Farm. And then we'll have plenty of more guests to talk about as well. We'll be raising money for Big League Impact. Last year's stream was so fun, and we hope you guys tune in via the stream, or you can check us out in person. And we're going to have some kind of way to like do live questions and stuff, probably related to donations or something. We'll get more into that as we go through. But again, we appreciate all your support as always. Okay, let's talk about the differences between this team. So do we want to maybe, I guess we want to evaluate all three levels, right? We want to evaluate what the 71 win team in 2023 is like, the 83 win team in 2024 was like, and what we think this 2025 team will be like. So let's start. I mean, we were just talking about the bullpen. Let's start at the bullpen here. 2023, right? You relied on Ryan Helsley, but then he was hurt a lot of the year and he struggled to begin the year a lot.
Yep.
You had Jordan Hicks, who like was really bad and then really good and then traded. You had Gio, who was really good and then really bad. You had.
I don't think he was ever really good in 2023. I'm gonna be honest.
He had moments.
Gio had a good start to the season.
Yeah.
Gio locked it down when Jordan Hicks was unwatchable in April.
Yeah. That's the overall thing I go back to that 2023 team is if you look month by month, they only ever had like one or two guys that you could rely on, and then someone else was bad. So Ryan Helsley in April was terrible. So was Jordan Hicks, but Gio was good. You get to May, Ryan Helsley was really good. Hicks was not good again. Gio was terrible. Then Hicks was good all summer, but no one else was. And remember that game where like Jordan Hicks blew the lead? I think he like threw the ball away or something like that, and everyone's pissed at Jordan. And it's like, who else do you bring in? Because no one else can get out right now.
I will just say
no. John King wasn't there yet. John King wasn't there yet.
Not John King. He did show up, and he was him. 3.09 ERA plus down the stretch. But I was going to mention my guy, Chris Stratton, who was reliable all year. Andrew Verhagen, of whom I sung praises all season. His 1.11 ERA plus, very strong that year.
Let's not go very strong. It was just like, that's a nice sixth inning guy.
Correct.
But they didn't have guys you could rely on the ninth inning.
And you're going to have a blast going into 314 sports cards because all the cards you want are going to be like $3 because no one else wants
My John King card is going to be the best thing ever.
You just need to start like a collection of mid Cardinals, and that's.
I have that. I built with signed balls. I built like the 2012 Cardinals bullpen with Kevin Seagrass.
Yeah, it only
Seth
cost you
Maness,
like
Trevor
$30.
Rosenthal.
Pour one out for Kevin Seagrass.
That was my guy.
He had like a 0.7 ERA, like in 70 appearances. That was 2012, 2013. He did that. It was wild.
It was like a Sungwon Oh first season type thing. Oh,
yeah,
so good too.
Okay, so that was the 2023 bullpen. Obviously, the 2024 bullpen was a light years different. They could lock down games. You had 4 or 5 guys at a time that you could close a game with, let alone just be confident in when they came in. And then I have 2025, and right now Kittredge is gone probably. Who else are you missing?
I think Helsley will be gone.
Helsley's probably gone. You're feel a little shakier about JoJo today than you did midway through last year. You probably feel better about Liberatore than you did going into the year. You feel pretty good about Ryan Fernandez.
You feel great about John King.
Maybe.
You feel fantastic about John King coming into the year.
So, like, it's probably, like, better than 2023, but not as good as 2024. Like, I feel like that's probably fair to say.
I mean, so I would say there's less proven talent coming into this year than there was in 2024. But also, like, we were worried about what Kittredge would do for the team. Like, he's coming off injury. So he ended up being really productive, but I think that was like well above what we would have expected from him.
Yeah.
The only big loss is Ryan Helsley. There's no way to slice it. Like,
well, I mean, Kit was good though.
Yeah.
We didn't expect it, but we expected it. We didn't know what to expect, but he was really good. So I feel like that's a big loss.
You're not missing Keenan Middleton? I think
I wish Keenan Middleton was going to be able to play for the Cardinals next year. I wish he'd played it all this year. Poor guy.
I wouldn't rule out them bringing back Kit or Keenan, like depending on what.
I don't think Kittredge. I think he's going to be too highly sought after.
I think
so too.
He's too reliable, too durable.
It seems like I don't like his peripherals.
Kittredge.
Yeah.
But
they've already a lot, but
they've already made 2 really interesting minor league signings so far this offseason, which can kind of reflect to me, or a 40-man roster claim and then a minor league signing for the bullpen, where both those guys could end up being like, maybe they're your Ryan Fernandez next year. Probably not as good. That's just really high expectations.
Or your Riley O'Brien.
Hey, I think Riley O'Brien would be good if he was actually healthy.
Yeah.
Like, you might get something out of him. I think when Leahy was actually on the mound and not getting shuttled back and forth, he was fine. He still had like a 106 ERA plus last year.
I mean,
he's a valuable 7th guy in your bullpen.
It'd be easy to meme them for like Nick Robertson and Riley O'Brien and all these guys, but it's like I would much rather go after like 5 of those guys and hope one of them's Ryan Fernandez than to sign Kittredge or Kenley Jansen to like a 2-year, $22 million deal. And it's like, if he's bad, then you put this $11 million reliever on your books. Like, remember how much every episode we get in here, Andrew would be like, DFA, Gio. And we'd be like, they're not going to do it because he has the contract. They're going to give him a chance. You get stuck with relievers like that. But when you have a Riley O'Brien and they're not performing, you send them to AAA and you let them figure it out. Yeah. And it costs you nothing to go after those guys.
Correct.
So, and I'm just encouraged that they finally figured out how to build the bullpen. And it's so volatile that I would just another offseason send out 10 darts, hope 3 of them stick.
Correct. So
Andrew doesn't seem bought in.
I think I feel way better about it than I would have felt about 2023. Also, no more Genesis Cabrera, which 2023 had Henny.
2 years.
That was the worst.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think the bullpen can be good. I buy into Chaim Bloom's ability to like find these guys. So I'm not ruling anything out. Like the bullpen, you just have to see when the season starts. It's like the biggest wild card that you have. It's like, are these guys going to, because I remember in spring training, everyone was so excited about Riley O'Brien. And then he came and he threw 1 inning.
He struck out Shohei Ohtani and then got hurt.
And then he came back, did he?
Yeah, he did. He did strike out Shohei Ohtani.
If you strike out Shohei, you're automatically a beast.
A Czech electrician struck him out too, and so did a position.
I was hoping you bring that up.
According to Andrew, anyone that strikes out Shohei Ohtani is probably the best pitcher of all time.
Jojo Romero struck him out many times, and I want him gone.
That's so cool.
So before we move on from the bullpen, you brought up a good point, Andrew. Like, so do you bank on and you keep some of those guys hoping they replicate it, or if you're in reset mode, these are the kind of decisions you make this offseason. Do you try to capitalize on whatever value JoJo has right now?
Yeah,
I think I would do, like, I want to try and build the best bullpen I possibly can this offseason through those dart throws, but like I would also want to shop Ryan Helsley and JoJo to see what I get for them. I think we're all of agreement with that.
Yeah, if Gio did this, I'd be shopping him too. Absolutely. Anyone that is like headed out soon. I don't think just anybody that was good though should get shopped. Like some of the younger arms like Matthew Liberatore still has a lot of value and a lot of time left in this organization. So like I wouldn't shop him.
What is that?
Oh man.
But I think but the whole point, like this whole conversation, which we do need to preface, is like we have to see what this offseason does, right? Because if most of us didn't know what Ryan Fernandez was going to turn into. I remember there's a lot of people were really high on Nick Robertson and he didn't work out. Yeah. Same with Riley O'Brien. Like those two guys were higher valued than Ryan Fernandez to most people. Ryan Fernandez ended up being the one who was really good. And we didn't see Keenan Middleton pitch at all. So to Andrew's point, we have to see what this offseason plays out. Let's go to the rotation next, because I think that's another opportunity where I would say it looks to me better than 2023 already. But the problem right now is it has a lower. I think the floor with this rotation is a little bit lower than 2024's, but the upside's there, where it could improve. Again, like you have Sonny Gray and Andre Palante in there, and Sonny Gray was really good last year, the peripherals at least. And so if you can get some of those like actual counting stats to reflect that more, that's an improvement for you. Andre Palante is in there. You get a Michael McGreevy in there now. But then there's so much even uncertainty with Michael McGreevy. Mo won't commit to it anymore. He's like, he might be in the bullpen. And it's like, okay.
That would make me so mad.
Like, what's your, confidence level in last year's rotation is probably like a 4. It was probably like a 5, where it's like, it's fine. Like as of things stand right now, like, are you more excited about this rotation, less excited about this rotation, Andrew? Like, do you think it can be competitive, or do you think there's too many holes with it?
We don't even know what the rotation is going to look like is the biggest thing. Like, is Eric Fetty going to be a part of it? Is Miles Michaelis going to be a part of it? That would make my confidence lower. But is Steven Matz going to be a part of it? It's like, we don't know yet. And if those guys end up getting traded, then it looks a lot different. But I feel like the rotation is the one where we have the most amount of questions. It's like, what is this even going to look like? Because the bullpen, you can pencil in like 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah, that's a great point.
They're going to be in there next year. Like, let's see, like you're going to have Fernandez, JoJo, I guess, if he doesn't get traded, Leahy, King, and like Roycroft, I guess, which is like fine. Like, I don't know if it's going to be great, but why are you guys talking about Packy Knott in the chat? He is
with the
Wait,
same
he missed
account,
this whole year. No.
and he's out all next year.
I thought he was back.
No.
No. All right. Bullpen's going to be terrible, guys.
Sandy, you're gonna have so much fun building these sets of reliever cards for like pennies on the dollar. What I pay for Shohei cards.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But like the rotation is we know Gray's going to be there, and we know Palante is going to be there, and then 3 other spots are completely up in the air. Like we have no idea who's going to be there, and that's like I don't know. That sounds fine to me. Gray is good, Palante is good. We just don't know what's going to happen, and I think they're going to sign a free agent starter this offseason. I think that's going to happen, and they're probably going to trade Fetty and match the bullpen. I don't know. Like there's 1,000 ways I can draw it up, and they're all probably like decent. I don't think they're going to put together a rotation that's nearly as bad as 23, but I can see a world where they pencil Michael McGreevy into the rotation, and he's just horrible.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sandy.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I feel like there's a world where that's actually possible.
No, you're right.
And there's another world where they pencil in, or Andre Palante is already in there, and he is also just bad because he has never pitched a full season as a starter. So we don't know. I don't think it's going to be as bad as 2023, but I don't know if there's as many sure options as last year.
Yeah. It feels like there's 2023, there was like looking back, there was more variance than like I anticipated going into it, where I thought you were going to have a steady Miles Michaelis. Steven Matz could give you something. Thought Wayne would be steady. But Jack had variance, right? Where it's like Jack could be Jack of the Cardinals or he'd be Jack of the Dodgers. You didn't know which one you're getting. And
Jack of the Dodgers isn't that good.
Well, that's true. That he could be 2019 Jack or he could be other Jack, and you got other Jack. Jordan Montgomery was really good, and then he also had moments he wasn't that great. I think that's more reflective of the 2024 rotation, where you have Sonny Gray, who you kind of see the floor this year, where it's like he looks really good, but things didn't work out, but you really expect him to be better. Andre Palante could be about as good as he was this year or a little bit worse. Quinn Matthews is just the ultimate wild card. He could be a 5 ERA guy. He could be a 3.3 ERA guy. Not expecting that, but like he could be something really huge for you. Same Michael McGreevy. And then to your point, Andrew, you don't know if you'll have Fetty, Michaelis, Matz. You don't know what Graceffo, Liberatore would be. There's just so many unknowns. And so that's, to me, easily the highest variance. Well, I think actually it goes in kind of reverse order of how the confidence level of coming out of 2024. It's like the lineup was the thing I was least sure of because or was the least performing, but it's the thing I have the most confidence in going in 2025, oddly enough. The rotation's probably mid again, where it's like actually, it might have the most variance. The bullpen is debatable, though, because we just don't know the names either. And bullpens year to year go off in different ways. But maybe let's talk about finish up the lineup then, because we have more certainty with it. Sandy, this was a bottom 8 lineup this year, and then with runners in scoring position, it was bottom 3. They're bringing back mostly the same players. Do you expect more output?
There's almost, I don't know. I hope the output is better. I feel like it has to be. I feel like there's regression to the mean coming for the Cardinals. Positive regression. It feels so unlikely that they could do this again. Like when you think about the fact that you probably had, I don't know, 8 or 9 hitters all perform like way below what the metrics would suggest, both that they should do, just based on who they are as hitters and their track record, and also what they should have done based on the quality of contact they made. It's like Lars Nootbaar was one of the unluckiest hitters in baseball last year. There's no way around that. Like he hit the ball really hard and it just didn't work out. There were a couple other guys on the team like that. Paul Goldschmidt had a lot of bad luck in terms of hitting the ball hard and it just not working out. Yeah. Like if you look at the surface level numbers, Goldschmidt was awful. But if you look at his baseball reference page, it wasn't like that out of line with 2022 and 2023, where he was a much, much better hitter. Yeah, it was worse. His bat speed was a little bit slower. I don't know. He didn't have like the optimized launch angle quite as often, but it shouldn't have been this bad. He was terribly unlucky. Willson Contreras was hurt. It's like, yeah, you bake in less injuries or whatever, maybe. It just feels like they have to get better. But also, there's a world in which these young bats just aren't coming around. Like there is a world in which the Nolan Gorman we saw last year is the new Nolan Gorman. And like, that's him. That's him as a ball player. And 2023 was the aberration, not 2024. I really hope that's not the case. And I think his minor league track record would suggest that it's not, but you never know. And maybe that hurts his development. There's a world in which Mason Wynn overperformed last year, and he takes a step back in his sophomore season, a sophomore slump, and it's much worse. Maybe the Alec Burleson that we saw that was tired near the end of the year is more in line with the Alec Burleson we're going to get in full seasons from now on. All those are really bad things that could mean things could get worse. I just think that there are more things suggesting the Cardinals should be better offensively next year.
Yeah.
It also, like, the last thing, RISP, right? Like, the Cardinals were historically bad with runners in scoring position. Thank goodness Turner Ward is gone. I can't blame it all on him, but at the same time, if you're a hitting coach of a team that is historically bad, like one of the worst 10 teams of all time with runners in scoring position, you probably should be fired. So it'll be nice to see him gone, and hopefully they're just luckier with runners in scoring position. Like, that's what it boils down to. You have to get hits at the right time, and sequencing was never on the Cardinals side last year. Literally never.
So I have the Cardinals 2024 ZiPS projections pulled up right now. So what they were expected to do in 2024 at the plate.
It's probably so different than what they did.
Yeah. Well, Paul Goldschmidt and Jordan Walker were projected to be the two best hitters on the team last year at the 124 and a 122 OPS. Both guys vastly underperformed.
Oh, way under 100 for Walker.
Yeah.
What was Goldie, like 98 or something?
I think he got to exactly 100.
Okay.
So about 20% worse than he's supposed to be. If you go to like actual outcomes for this year, they had two guys that had above a 120 WRC plus. It was Ivan Herrera and Willson Contreras. Both guys only played 70 games last year. So your two best hitters barely played. They played.
So you're adding a whole season of a 120 WRC plus guy between the two of them.
Yeah, because awesome. I would hope Contreras is a 140 something again, but like, let's not like totally bank on that. And Herrera could see a little bit of regression to 115 to 120 range, but I think his bat will play. But then other guys. So Nolan Gorman was projected to be 116. I think he finished in the 80s WRC plus. The only two. So basically, in summary, the only two players who outperformed their projections this year for the Cardinals were Mason Wynn and Brendan Donovan. Brendan Donovan was projected a 108. He did a 115. Mason Wynn was projected at 88. He was like a 103. Newt was projected a 118. He was like a 112, but also barely played. Nolan Arenado was projected a 116. He underperformed that. Nolan Gorman, again, 116, way underperformed that. Alec Burleson projected a 106. He was about in line with that. Ivan Herrera outperformed his too, but he barely played. Yeah. So like, even just from an objectives projection standpoint last year, the team vastly underperformed what it should do offensively. So I think there is room for positive regression there that also helps the club out. And that's without even the fact that, like, okay, like, can Walker not even just go back to the mean a little bit, but can he also get to where the upside was supposed to be? Same with the Gorman. Like, is Sajasi's like play aware, like the way he's navigating the plate right now and using his aggressiveness to his advantage? Like, is that a real thing? What does Ivan Herrera do when he plays 120 games versus 70 games? What does Contreras do for you 150 games? What does Newt do for you? I think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement here in a way that the bullpen, you're probably looking at a lot of opportunities for it to take a step back, and the rotation just has so much variance there. Andrew, what are you thinking about this lineup right now?
I just think it has to get better, and if it doesn't get better, then they're probably in even more trouble than we thought, right? Because if these guys are not good, then it sets the Cardinals back a couple more years, right? You have to wait for guys like Weatherholt to develop. And have to see what you have in the lower levels of the minors, or again, import guys like Goldie and Arenado, which I don't know, maybe it'll work, but I don't think you're going to get them for absolutely nothing again. And I think like one of these guys is bound to pan out this season, right? Whether it's Newt Barr or Walker or Gorman, like one of them is bound to become like a better player than they are now and like sort of reach their projections. It just has to. And I mean, that's why Chaim Bloom is here to fix our development. Like if he has the input that he needs to, and the resources that the team needs to improve their player development, then I think the likelihood that one of them pans out becomes better. And you already have Mason Wynn. I think people thought he got a little bit lucky this year, but I think that's just the kind of hitter he is. Puts the ball in play, and when you put the ball in play, good things tend to happen. Burleson might turn into that as well. And you just need one of these guys to pan out, and that's all you really have to have for this season. But I think more of them are going to become productive hitters. Like Gorman just wasn't productive at all. Walker wasn't productive really at all until like part of the second half when he was recalled. And I don't know. It was really odd this season for him. Just not a big enough sample size to say anything with. And yeah, I guess we'll just like we need it to happen, and I think it will.
Yeah. And also like underrated part of this too is like if they're really overhauling the player development and changing so much of the staffing here and philosophy, it's like this isn't just the same old Cardinals. You're not just relying on, well, the Cardinals haven't proven to us they can fix themselves. It's like this is new leadership, right? Like I know Mo's still there, but Mo's on the way out, and Hein Bloom's the one, and his new hire of Rob Stafolio and like whoever they hire as the farm director, like they are the ones who are putting in place this new regime. And so it really is like what is this new regime going to do versus what the same old Cardinals can do, right? So I think they're like that's an opportunity to be excited. I also think there's ways that they could be creative next year and potentially trying to like up their offensive output, where it's like I love Victor Scott, but like he's not ready yet, and so he probably starts the year in AAA. And so it's like I wrote about this today. Like Newt apparently wants to play.
He starts in AAA. I think that's dumb.
Victor Scott.
I'd be fine with him. And
the new center field thing is terrible. They made the same mistake with Tyler O'Neill, and then he got hurt. And like don't do that.
I feel like you can't just treat players with kid gloves though, and like assume it. Like
he's not a center fielder. Like I don't get why
he's an okay. He profiles as a fine center fielder though. The defense isn't terrible.
Yeah,
it's not like he's unplayable.
Tyler never really played. I mean, Tyler played a little bit of center field coming up, but he was a Gold Glove left fielder. And then he's like, "Hey, I want to up my value going onto the market. Put me in center field." It's like Newt's played quite a bit of center field in his career so far. So I don't think it's because I tried to because my initial reaction when I read that from Derek Gold was like, Tyler O'Neill, are you kidding me? Like, don't do this. But then I thought about it, I'm like, Newt's played center and you're in a reset year. So I actually would double down on this and be like, hey, Newt, you become a really valuable player if you're healthy, producing.
Why don't you just let Victor Scott play?
Because he's not ready. I mean, if he proves he's ready in spring, go for it. But if he's not ready, don't rush it.
He was
they made the mistake.
His moments, and then they just didn't play him in the second half.
Yeah,
I put Sonny over him when he came back, and it was just like, why are we? I mean, he's already like he adjusted to AAA. He fixed his swing. He came up. He was pretty good. He improved himself over that, and you just let him ride it out. That's what you did with Mason Wynn last year.
Yeah, I think it's more like when at the end of last year, when myself and I think you guys and so many others were saying like, why isn't Victor Scott playing? I think it was more about you were out of it. He was already in the major leagues a little bit. See what you have in him. But I think you get a clean slate next year, and I think you start him in AAA if he doesn't. If you give him the chance to win the job, but I'm assuming he probably doesn't. I'm thinking, do you have Michael Ciani in center field or Lars Nootbaar? And I think you up your value as a club next year, and you up Nootbaar's value as a player to you if he's a center fielder and he's probably like a 4.5 win player WAR wise, and he's producing like a 120 WRC plus and playing adequate center field versus having him in left. And like this is how you improve your offense too. You get him in center field and you get Sajaci in the lineup every day and Burleson in the lineup every day and Gorman every day. If you put Ciani out there, then you do have a Sajaci off the bench, or you have Burleson off the bench or Gorman off the bench every day. I'm not married to the idea of it, but I think those are the things you should be trying in a reset year, is try to get your best players in the lineup every day rather than Ciani, who I just don't think any of us think is a long-term piece of this club. But I don't think he forced the issue with Newton center either. But there's not great evidence out there about if center field is more or less like hurtful to your body. And you could probably argue with the way Newt's injuries happen. They're the like breaking your thumb, rib stuff. It's like, okay, that's probably crashing into walls more than it is like diving on the ground and playing in the corner. And like he's not a soft tissue guy. So I'm not worried about him running into the gap and pulling a hammy. I'm worried about him running into the wall and breaking his ribs. Like that's been his thing. And so actually you think of center field probably as the guy who doesn't do it as much as you have a guy in the corner who's bumping up against walls and making some weird plays. But anyways, I don't know if they'll actually explore it. It seems like they're at least considering it, and Newt would like to try it. But I think that's a way your offense could be better next year, is instead of having an 80 WRC plus guy by ninth for you, you might have Thomas Sajaci, which I like the upside there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with that. I just like to the Victor Scott thing. Like, I just don't think you're in any hurry to like waste his service time either. There's no reason to play him if he's not ready. And if, I don't know, like I've said in the past, like I understand why teams do service time manipulation. And it's like, if you can get an extra year by like letting him get, and like, it's not like the Chris Bryant thing where you'd have to make up some stupid excuse about base running. Like, it's obvious that Victor Scott could use more development time and more polishing in the minor leagues. And it's obvious that he has immense value to the Cardinals in the future. Like, when we ranked the prospects going into last year in terms of like most valuable to the club, we did put Victor Scott as the most valuable prospect for the Cardinals. I'm not sure that's true anymore.
That was a mistake.
But I think the general thought behind it, which is that like the Cardinals don't have another
I don't know if
center
we did
fielder.
that. But
We didn't put him as viable. We just said
Put
we
him in
wouldn't.
S tier.
As untouchable.
Yeah,
like we wouldn't trade him. But I don't think we said he was the best prospect.
Not the best, the most valuable is what our argument was, if I remember correctly.
We'll have to go back. I think we were like, I think we even said like it looks weird for him to be in here. We just wouldn't trade him. And I think we talked about positional value of like center field. You don't have a guy
that's
like
what I'm
that.
that's what I'm about to say though. Like the Cardinals don't have another guy to play center field in the wing. Like there's no one waiting in the wings.
we traded him to the Dodgers for Eric Fetty.
Yeah.
But Chase Davis is coming. Like that's potentially someone. And he's playing
he's
center.
Not going to be nearly the defensive player that Scott is.
But you're hoping the bat is really good.
Yeah, you really are. For sure. But I feel like a lot of people say Chase Davis still profiles better as a corner outfielder.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of true center fielders in the system. And so like you don't want to just force him again and potentially burn his development. Like that's not worth it to the Cardinals. Yeah. And if Lars Nootbaar, like you said, can play center field, that's awesome. Like might as well, I don't see a problem with it. Also, Lars Nootbaar is injury prone for sure. Like you can't get away from that now, but they're weird injuries. It's not like O'Neill where it's like you knew he was going to get hurt playing. You just knew he was going to get hurt playing center field. And I'm happy to eat my words if Nootbaar gets hurt in April because he's playing center field. And Andrew, you can rip me to pieces for it. But like with O'Neill, you just knew there was going to be like, oh, I stretched my hamstring. Like, oh no, I'm going to miss 2 months.
You know what we should do? We should sign Tyler O'Neill.
That'd be funny.
For so much money now.
To play in center field.
Like you hit on it. Like you never question Lars Nootbaar's effort. Never. And also like when was the last time, like when does Newt get scratched from a game because he doesn't want to play on turf and is worried about his knee? Like O'Neill and Newt are different guys. They
100%.
both have the injury.
No, I get it. I just think it's I thought that Scott made more sense to just like ride him out because I feel like he had a great spring this year. I feel like he can have a good spring, and I felt like we were just putting him in the Mason Wynn boat of like, oh, you struggled, you were terrible this year, but you can be good next year, right? Like
potentially. I just like I'm not penciling it in, and also like hold me to it, guys. Like I'm done getting excited about spring training stats because there are a lot of people out there, and by the end of spring training, I think all three of us are like, you should probably not start Victor Scott in center field to start the year, and then Dylan Carlson got hurt, and it changed our opinions. But it's like there are a lot of things in Victor Scott's profile in spring training that it was like, okay, you're putting up numbers right now, but this is not sustainable. And if you get to the major league level, and then what happened? He had a negative WRC plus, which I've literally never seen before.
Spring training stats. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like. Mason Wynn didn't have like a fantastic spring either, but he like adjusted and figured it out.
Yeah.
He was great this year. And I think Scott can have a similar season. Like I think he's had enough. That's why I wanted him to stay and start in center field.
Yeah.
When the team fell out of contention and they were just like, no, we're not doing that. So that was fun.
I'm not ruling it out, but like to your point, like if his bat if it's better next year, then like actually you do want Victor Scott in center because you get that elite defense and in a fine bat, and you move Newt to left field and you have good defense in left field with a good bat. I'm just open to ideas like that next year of trying things.
Yeah. And like, I mean, remember during spring training when the Cardinals hadn't hit a home run for like 2 weeks and everyone was freaking out like, oh, their offense is going to be bad. And we were trying to be like, oh yeah, they're not going to be that bad this year. And then they were that bad.
They were that bad. Yeah, that was tough.
So there you go. We lost Josh.
I'm hiding from telling people to calm down on that one. This is also another interesting thing from Bill. Like Bernie had talked about the leadoff hitters being pretty terrible last year for the Cardinals, and like that was basically Mason Wynn. And Mason Wynn was like statistically way better when he was not leading off versus when he was in the leadoff spot. And you have Brendan Donovan, who literally is like top since he's come into the major leagues in 2022. He is top 15 in all of baseball on-base percentage. Long live Brendan Donovan. I love Brendan Donovan. Brendan Donovan should be your leadoff hitter. Mason, we can maybe bat second for you or bat toward the bottom lineup. But like there's some lineup construction things last year that I was kind of scratching my head about.
Winning like the 7 spot would be really great. Like I would much rather see him there with someone on base to take advantage of the high batting average.
Yeah.
And let Donovan lead off.
Or like Herrera could bat second next year. Like I think they could get way more interesting
with Contreras third.
Nootbaar should bat second.
Or you could do
Newbar second
something.
would be awesome.
But
You could-
I don't like the lefty, and then whatever.
So you could do like Donovan, Herrera, Newt, Contreras, or something like that.
I feel like I'd want
Wilson.
Contreras.
Donovan, Contreras, Newt,
Maybe.
and then I don't know.
You can't go wrong with those top 4 hitters though. Like,
Or yeah, Contreras
that's
can bat
really good
second.
top
Like a
four.
lot of teams
Yeah,
bat their
I
best
like
hitter
that.
second. So you go like
I like
Donovan,
your best guy
Contreras.
third.
Yeah. What I mean, anyways, I think we can all agree they
lead
could probably do
Contreras
things a little
off.
differently.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But like honestly, like you look at the lineup next year, like Burleson could bat 7th or 8th for you. And that's like again, there's a world where it's like, well, there's a reason he's batting 7th or 8th for you. Or there's a world where it's like, man, Alec Burleson's batting 7th or 8th. Like that's a pretty decent lineup right there.
Yeah, there's a world where it's like Alec Burleson has a 111 WRC plus, and he's the 8th guy in your lineup. That's awesome. And it's like prime Paul DeYoung when he was actually good, hitting at the bottom of your lineup.
So that's, I mean, again, this is what we talked ourselves into last year at this lineup, and then it didn't work out.
I'm
So
not talking myself into anything, guys. It's not happening.
That's understandable at this
well, I
point.
was gonna say we
65
can't do
wins
that.
maximum.
Maximum. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna be honest. I know it's possible they only win 60 something games next year, but I'd be shocked if they don't win at least 70. That'd be wild. But yeah, so again, I think basically the crux of this conversation is we need to see more. We need to know
Hey,
exactly what
Roki
moves they're gonna make.
Sasaki wants to go to a small market team with a good development system. And you know who's revamping their development system this year? Maybe it's all part of the plan.
We're gonna remove Andrew from the stream, and we're gonna, anyways. Hey, you never know about Roki. But yeah, we need to see what happens in this rotation, this lineup, this bullpen, and then we can talk about can they contend next year? Can they? Maybe, but like range of outcomes wise, I think we're counting as a pretty low probability. I think we have a pretty high probability of them being pretty mid again, and then there's a decent probability that they're bad and they're not going to fully reset. And I mean, you could split. I mean, Helsley, I think, is one that universally we can agree needs to be traded, but you can kind of split hairs about whether they should be trying on Contreras or Gray or trying to push them to accept it too. Same with like the JoJo's of the world, some other guys. But overall, I think, and also like the other thing as we're going out too is going into the offseason, they had a lot of uncertainty about the RSN stuff. They didn't know, are they going to miss out on a $75 million check and then basically only get like 15 million of that this year through subscriptions? Or could they make a deal like they just did? So I think there's a real argument that it's like, hey, going into the offseason, they were trying to prep people for this doomsday scenario where they don't work out this FanDuel deal and they really don't have any money and they're really cutting costs everywhere. And I don't think they have to do that anymore. And now they can be, which I think this is best case scenario. Now you can float Nolan Arenado out there, but teams aren't like, teams can't be like, oh, they have to move him. The Cardinals don't have to. And so a team actually has to give you something. I'm not saying like a top 100 prospect or anything, but they give you something to make you move him. Right. Same with Ryan Helsley. Like, you don't have to move Ryan Helsley. A team has to come in here and give you an offer that you can't refuse. Same with Sonny Gray and Willson Contreras. I think that's a good leverage space to be in, rather than every team in baseball is like, oh, they got to move Sonny Gray so we can load. I mean, that's why the Cardinals got Paul Goldschmidt for what he did and Nolan Arenado for what they did, because blinking lights from the Diamondbacks and Rockies, we're trying to cut payroll. We're trying to get rid of these guys, and the Cardinals should get advantage of that. Teams can't do that to them this offseason. So I think you could still see a lot of movement from this team, or this could be basically the roster they have going into the year. So, but again, we'll be
tentpole bat. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe that's the thing we could talk about soon, is because there are worlds where I think they could try and get creative and still go after the Brett Rooker or Alec Boehm or these other guys. I'm not sold on the Boehm one.
I don't know if I'm.
We should probably talk about it.
Boehm.
Yeah, me either. But we could talk about it. So, again, we have plenty to talk about this offseason. It's been a slow offseason so far, but most take until about late November to really get going. So as we start seeing movement around the league, I think that's when the trade markets can start to heat up for the Cardinals, and we'll see if they make any moves or not. But again, we always appreciate you guys being a part of the podcast. Like and subscribe, helps channel a ton. Again, if you subscribe and then enter on the giveaway on Twitter, Andrew's got that signed Mason Wynn ball courtesy of 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. So we'll be giving that out once we hit 3K subscribers. Again, we appreciate the support as always, and we'll see you guys next time.